Evans had specifically stated that it would take it as an advice and then prepare. Obviously, when it comes to their acceptance of the situation on the ground, clearly every political party will pick and choose, how they analyze issues. And no one is doubtful, or no one is actually doubting that indeed, these, realities, i.e., COVID, as well as the war in Ukraine, has an impact. In fact, if you say that, then of course you're not, living in a very a very real world. But of course, we will also refer the NPP and the kind of assertions they make, and compare that to the times of Professor Mills, obviously John Mahama. They also had situations. Obviously, there was credit crunch in 2008 onwards. So whenever NDC, MPP is making comparisons and then comparing, the economy of the NDC era to them, they don't make mention of credit crunch. Credit crunch was absolutely terrible. The British economy was down, the American economy, the German economy was down. So many other economies were down. I particularly was affected, in credit crunch. I was, my company actually pulled off, and therefore we had to, look for a new job, in England. Now, obviously, in President Mahama's era, you had, Ebola, you had, Doomsor, etc. And so when you're making the comparisons in terms of economic performances, they rather will cite, problems that are actually affecting them today without citing problems that affected previous governments, but make a point that they have actually performed better. Of course, I'm not an economist to actually check the numbers and say whether they did, they don't or not. But the point is that when you have said prior to COVID that you have had a very robust economy, you wouldn't expect a deterioration within a very short period. And that is exactly what has happened to us. And by the way, we know that during the COVID period, most countries, including our country, had actually received support from IMF, from World Banks, from global institution, multinational, development partners, for example. Exactly. Now we haven't actually had an account, and so it speaks to good governance. For example, a lot of institutions have questioned, transparency. We've had terrible relationship with the media. These issues are not COVID affected, are not COVID related, are not Ukraine related. So yes, I can understand a part of the economy has been affected by these. But what about the things, the social issues, the other issues that are not within the realms of these particular realities? What is the government's answer to that? And that is why they will talk about, governance issues. They will talk about corruption issues, because there have been a lot of references to corruption, which we have seen the government not pursuing, frankly. And so when you're painting the picture, I think it is fair to the people to let the people understand where the difficulties are and where you could have performed or you could have delivered and haven't delivered. And then be candid to admit that indeed you haven't actually delivered on these areas. And then give us a roadmap, how these areas are going to be solved. Currently, we're saying that it looks like there is doomsday. The government keeps rejecting that there's no doomsday, but people are experiencing it. Where is the transparency? Is there doomsday or not? Must people prepare for the worst? You have to be clear in your communication rather than trying to propagate things that aren't,